Hey guys! Let me show you two of the craziest games in the chess Olympiad that I have seen that are both in the Grob opening, which is the first move g4, the worst first move according to the chess engine. The second one is really a proper game, very interesting, exciting, with lots of twists and turns. And the first one is just like, what? This is like the weirdest stuff I've ever seen at such high level. So let me show you the first game between Mustache Mary Ange from the Seychelles women's team and Shutya Clean from the Albania team. Sorry if I'm mispronouncing the names. So this is very short and very strange. So g4, first move, not the best one, but it can be used for surprise purposes. After d5, there are various ways to proceed. In the second game, you will see the Grob gambit, just bishop g2, ignoring this pawn, giving it up for some attack, and it's an interesting choice. But here, Mary Ange goes f3, which is, I guess, the worst move also in this position, because now black goes e5 and there is a threat of queen h4, checkmate in one. So it's kind of hard to protect against this. You have to, probably the best move is bishop g2 to give luft to your king. But Mary Ange goes e3, which is also very, very strange, because now queen h4 check is possible, for example, and you will have to bone cloud your king, which is not a happy decision. The position is already winning for black according to the engine. But black decides to go e4, also a logical move, striking at this pawn chain and creating some other threats that you will now see. So f4 is a game-losing move, and now black has mate in 3. Can you find it? I guess you can. It's very easy. Queen h4 check. The only move is king e2, and then bishop g4. And the king has no squares, because the queen and the bishop operate in a beautiful tandem. The only move is knight f3. Bishop takes f3 is checkmate. Checkmate in 6 moves. This player, Mary Ange Mustache, I've googled her, and seems like in the previous Olympiad in Chennai in 2022, she also kept losing games like in 5-6 moves. In some games she resigned on move 3. I don't know what's going on with her. Maybe, I don't know. I don't want to draw any conclusions, but she definitely shouldn't be playing in the Olympiad. I'm sure that although the Seychelles is not a big country, they definitely have people playing better than this. This is very, very strange. Okay, but this is just like for purposes of fun. The second game is a legit one. Let's take a look at the second one. It's a very interesting one. It's played between an FM and an IM. An FM playing with the white pieces. Ouakir Mehdi Pierre from Morocco. And his opponent, Rosalie Maile Bernardo, is from Uruguay. And it takes some guts to go g4 against a higher rated opponent, because yeah, this is the audacity. I admire this, and this was not similar to the previous game that I showed you before. This is a proper one and a good one. So d5, bishop g2, the Grob gambit again. Black can take the pawn, but it's maybe even not the best move, because after c4, this diagonal is very powerful for the bishop. c6, for example, doesn't fail, but queen b3 attacks the b7 pawn, attacks the d5 pawn, and it's not pleasant for black. So instead of that, instead of taking this gift of a pawn, black does something else. Black here goes c6, saying, you know what, the threat is stronger than the execution. I will be able to take the pawn next if you don't defend it. If you defend it with h3, then you've wasted another move, and then h4 and f4 become weak. There are ideas such as the knight maneuvers to those squares, for example. If you want, by the way, I can make a video on the theory of the Grob opening, because it's an interesting one. You can play it in Blitz, and I know some people, a friend of mine, a Russian FIDE master, Maxim Mariev, keeps playing it in Blitz and has defeated many top GMs with it. So there is some spice. Some poison in this opening. But h3 is a timid move. A more ambitious one is g5, which is what Mehdi Pierre goes for, restricting the enemy's knight because now the knight cannot go to f6 or h6. And also this pawn maybe will go to h4, so on h3 it's not doing too much. So h6 trying to undermine this pawn, but h4 protects it. And we have a trade. And yes, black is better because you should not push your pawn, push a g-pawn before developing with pieces, for example, like this. You shouldn't do this, but sometimes you can get away with it. So e5, black has the center, black is better, but white attacks the center with d4. Black tries to create this connect 4 to combat the light squared bishop, which is a good move. c4 tries to break up this pawn chain. Bishop d6. We have natural developing moves. Now white again is piling up pressure on the d5 square, so black defends this. And f3. Whenever your opponent has a powerful pawn chain, you should try to destroy it. So this is what white is doing here. Bishop h2, and taking the knight, a very interesting position. You don't, it's not that often that you see a bishop on h2 without the king on g1. So king f1 protects the knight, and queen d6 actually loses all the advantage for black. Turns out that that now white has equalized. So there were better options for black. The best one was taken according to the engine and just retreating. And the white king is too weak. Turns out that black is considerably better here. But it's not easy to find and to evaluate over the board. So queen d6 is a normal move, perfectly human. Takes. And black has given up a pawn here, but black has some counterplay, some attack. And this king is not too well positioned on f1. Of course, the computer is unafraid and says that white is now better because white is up a pawn, but humanly speaking, of course, you should be very precise to not get mated here with white. Bishop g2 tries to overprotect the h3 square, because in some variations that bishop of black could have gone there, maybe after the trade of this knight. So black retreats the bishop, queen e1, and now begin some maneuvers which actually show that the grab should not be underestimated, because just look at this position. Black makes some normal moves, activating the knight. White activates the queen. Now, probably black didn't want to go here because knight a6 serves the purpose of probably going here in some variations. But already white is +1. White is much better here. Bishop f4, trading the only powerful bishop black has. And white is practically winning. See the evaluation bar, +2.6 already, because black is struggling to develop. And white has great development, has the pawns in the center, which control very many important squares. White is a pawn up, and black doesn't have a clear plan. Here black goes king f8 to try and hide the king from the center. There was a plan of going, for example, bishop e6 and trying to go for long castles, but black didn't like something, probably the fact that black can get attacked in this variation with b4, b5, and it might get ugly for black. So instead, black goes king f8, knight f3, finishing the development. It's funny that it's move 19, and finally white made this knight f3 move. So 19 moves into the game, the knight was still on the starting square, but it's okay because black has two pieces on the starting squares, the c8 bishop and the a8 rook, and they are not participating at all. And you can, of course, go bishop d7 or bishop e6, but this bishop will not be doing much. And black is losing because of problems with piece coordination. This knight turns out is stranded. Yes, it can go here, but it's not doing too much. So queen e6 attacks this pawn. King f2 just gives up the pawn, because if you take here, well, you waste another tempo, and rook h1 comes and there is a deadly attack on the king. So instead, black tries to regroup and put the knight on g6 to protect this square and attack the queen. Rook h1 still comes, knight g6, attacking the queen. Queen d6. This is an inaccuracy according to the computer, but I like this choice. You just trade the queens because you're up a pawn and you have a dominating position. Black has struggles developing the pieces, and yes, black will be able to develop, but finally it will take more time. Time is a very important factor in chess. White will definitely win some material and be up not 1 but 2 pawns. This is exactly what happens. So they trade. Now c5 anchors this knight on this square. The bishop cannot move because this pawn will get taken. Well, it can move. Actually, it moves. It does. But here white, instead of taking the pawn straight away, decides to trade another set of pieces. The knights, still white is winning because rook b8 is not a happy choice. Your rook will be standing on the back rank. Yes, this is the best move according to the engine, but black has no play whatsoever, and white can do anything. It can infiltrate over here, it can push the pawns, it can restrict the knight. There are many plans. It can maneuver the knight to e5, for example. Everything is winning here. So instead of being passive, black decides to activate and give up 1 pawn for some piece activity, because the rook will infiltrate and take a pawn of white, but white will take another pawn with check. So you can take, but I will take with the bishop. This is exactly what happens, and here black could have taken this pawn, but then d5 and d6 and it's game over. So instead black tries to go for some activity with the knight, but rook e4 and king e3. King is centralized. Now there is a threat of d5 and it's not good. So after g6, bishop d5 is also a nice plan, because when you're up 2 pawns, you can trade the pieces and go into a winning rook endgame, which is exactly what white does, and d5 is a nice move here. So d5 uses the fact that this rook is undefended, and if black takes here, it's of course a winning king and pawn endgame. So black retreats, but white just takes another pawn and goes king d4, both attacking the rook and defending this d5 pawn. And now, very important is the fact that those 2 pawns are both passed and connected passed pawns. And white doesn't care about this a2 pawn because this is very much winning. White just advances the pawns. White has even this pawn. Even without that one, it would have been winning. But with this pawn, it's very easily winning in several moves. Here, of course, you can take, but white does something even more clever, g7. And if you take here, you lose a rook, because this is a skewer. So black goes a3, trying to deflect this rook, but white just checks black, and here black resigns, because if black goes here, this is a checkmate in 1. e5 check, a very nice idea to checkmate the king, because the rook restricts it. And if black goes here, for example, you can queen. Black should take, but then rook a8 again is a skewer and wins the rook. So nice game in the group opening, where Pierre defeated a much higher rated opponent. Kudos to him. If you want a video on the group opening theory from me, drop a comment, guys, and see you in the next videos and podcasts.